When Toto decided to major in chemistry at the UP, he clearly wanted to understand the fundamental molecular nature of things. He excelled in chemistry and graduated summa cum laude and valedictorian of the UP class of 1960. Sometime after, he became a Fulbright scholar and pursued a PhD in biochemistry at the California Institute of Technology in Pasadena under the mentorship of Professor Norman Davidson. At Caltech, Toto published his first papers on the biophysical properties and topology of DNA, the revolutionary discovery of the previous decade. His interest in DNA grew into DNA function, particularly the mechanism of DNA replication, as he pursued his postdoctoral studies at Stanford University under Professor Robert Lehman. Those who really know Toto know that he is equally famous for being the first scientist to isolate the nucleotide joining enzyme DNA ligase from the bacterium E. coli. This scientific discovery is the basis for a component of the molecular cloning technique that is essential in molecular biology and biotechnology today. It was with strong idealism and nationalism that Toto Oliveira returned to the Philippines after his postdoctorate in 1968. He was determined to teach biochemistry and establish a good research laboratory at the UP College of Medicine. But sadly realizing that the kind of research he did in the United States would not be possible in a Philippine setting due to limited resources, he revived his natural interest in the Philippine seashells of his youth and made this the object of what has turned out to be an intense, lifelong scientific journey with a distinctly Filipino flavor. The rest we know is history. Having gone through the natural exercises in empiricism in his childhood and the training in rigorous experimentation as a young scientist, Toto Oliveira today finds himself an international scientific leader who is creating and rationalizing new paradigms of the way nature works, of how life has evolved through millions of years, based on the scientific evidence that he has accumulated on the megadiverse mollusks, where their biodiversity and chemical diversity are a reflection of the tremendous success of their biological adaptation and survival in the environment. Indeed, the holy grail of science is still undeniably the understanding of the most enigmatic and complex biological system that exists, the human brain. Its study represents the most daunting and challenging of all scientific endeavors. Toto Oliveira has made us realize that we can pry into the workings of the human brain by studying the snails. That, in fact, across species and groups of animals, many of the underlying unifying principles of life, the biomolecular mechanisms and strategies for survival, are extremely conserved. Others would perceive the venomous snails as lowly, unintelligent creatures, but they are deceived. Toto Oliveira, through his work, has scaled the similarities and differences between human and snail intelligence. And these basic scientific discoveries have led to the discovery and development of neuroactive compounds that would benefit mankind. In recognition of his achievements in marine toxinology and neuropharmacology, Toto was awarded Most Outstanding Alumnus of Caltech in 2002. To this day, Toto remains humble and in awe of the wonders of nature. He is first and foremost a naturalist, a biologist, a taxonomist and ecologist. Appreciation of marine biodiversity has led him to embark on a social mission to educate our youth and rural folk about our marine treasures, which are the richest on this planet. In 2006, he was named Professor of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, and this award has allowed him to pursue his projects on biodiversity education and conservation in our country. I recall from Lulu that Toto's mother, Carolina Marquez Olivera, would spend a lot of time visiting the UP Oblation because she loved the UP. She wanted her son to be with the UP. But Toto never really left the UP. He has been coming home at least twice a year in the last 30 years, working with research collaborators, mentoring graduate students, and quietly supporting research at the UP. It is thus fitting that we have honored this outstanding UP alumnus during UP's centennial celebration. He serves as inspiration to us Filipinos, especially our youth. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Toto Oliveira, who will give his talk entitled From Cone Snail Venoms to Drugs, the Scientific Odyssey of a UP Graduate. Thank you.
President Roman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for that wonderful ceremony, and I thank Professor Concepcion for a really elegant and wonderful introduction. I almost feel I shouldn't talk anymore. She put things so very elegantly. So, scientists are generally an informal group, and I thank you for the great honor and also for this most impressive ceremony. But what I'd like to do is to tell you a little bit about the scientific work that we have done. Now, when I look back at my scientific career, I realize that we've gotten recognition partly because the work that we've done has been quite different from the work of almost anybody else. And more I've come to realize that this uniqueness is really because of the Philippine character of our scientific work. So what I'd like to do is point out to you some of the Philippine features. Although science is international, as you will see, we have a profound debt to the marine biodiversity of the Philippine archipelago, and we also have a real debt to the maritime traditions of Philippine culture. I think we do not realize how innovative the maritime traditions of Philippine culture have been, and I would like to highlight those contributions of our fishing villages, because that really has been the basis of a lot of our work. So let me talk about a small sliver of the biodiversity of the Philippines. And the small sliver that I'm going to talk about are the cone snails, and an example is shown in the first slide. So this is the Admiral Cone, which is one of 700 species of cone snails. And as you can see, it has a beautiful and intricate pattern. And when Europeans first came to the Philippines, they regarded this as a treasure. And they would bring it back home and really put it with their best jewelry. But the most valuable of all natural history objects in the 17th century was this cone snail, the glory of the sea cone, or Conus gloria maris. And because it has a beautiful, intricate pattern, and a close-up is shown here, it was so admired that it was said that a prince in Europe traded one of his larger estates to be able to obtain one of the 6 specimens that were then known. And in fact, all of those specimens probably came from the Philippines. So our fishermen have probably collected more cone snails than any other group on Earth. And the reason is that they know where and when to find them. Furthermore, of course, we have biodiversity, and so there are more species of cone snails that are found in the Philippines than we find in any other place. And part of the reason is because of our own geological history. I think I feel more comfortable down here. Our own geological history. So our geological history of tectonic plates, the same geological history that has given us volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, has also led to the evolution of what is widely agreed to be the very richest marine biota in the entire planet. So if we look at the Philippines today, it's not the way the Philippines looked about 11 million years ago. And as you can see, Palawan was further north than Luzon, and bits of Mindanao were going west. And 31 million years ago, you can see that Palawan was way north of Luzon, and in fact, bits of Mindanao were way south of the equator, thousands of miles south of the equator. And so these tectonic plates started to move together and to form what is the Philippines today. And this unique geological history has given us really this marine biodiversity, because the marine biota of widely separated areas all across much of the Western Pacific have contributed to the Philippine archipelago and the marine biodiversity of the Philippine archipelago. So this is really the basis for our being able to find so many cone snails within the Philippines. What I'd like to do is to show you another map that shows serious stinging cases from cone snails. So these are cases where people were either severely injured or were in fact killed. And as you can see, the Philippines has more dots than any other place, because there are more cone snails that were collected in the Philippines than anywhere else. Most of these stinging cases were caused by only one out of the 700 species of cone snails.